Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Welcome to the show, Marie.
Hey, Crystal. Thanks for having me.
So you are a fellow American who moved to France. Tell us your story. You were living in Dallas, New York City, and then France. So tell us what happened.
Honestly, it was such a whirlwind. I was living in New York. I'd been living there for about 5 years last year, and tech isn't really having its best moment as far as retention. And I was part of a layoff around late summer, and I was just starting to question what I was doing. And tech wasn't what it used to be. I'm a product designer, as one of the things that I do, and I just started to ask myself, what else can I do? Is this a moment where I can spin it to where I can do something different? My lease was ending in October, early October, and I just needed some change because I just felt like a shell of myself. And that summer, I was actually spending working remotely in France. I was working remotely in France for a month. And I just did this road trip around France, and I was like, should I just go? And I researched ways that I could effectively live in France as an American citizen. And I came across the long stay visa, a tourist visa that lets you stay in France for up to a year. And I applied. I got all my stuff together for the application, which was just a headache because it's true, the French do love their admin work and their paperwork. So I was getting all of this stuff together. At the same time, I decided to not renew my lease in New York. And so I was packing up my apartment. I was, running on a little bit of a what is that called? I was running on a little bit of severance that I got from the company that had a layoff. And I just had everything up in the air at the same time, basically. And
And you were just like, I'm going to change my entire life.
Yeah, exactly. And, I'm pretty lucky that I have my family. Also, if things don't work out, I can go to Dallas and, rejuvenate there. There is, a plan B also, which I'm very lucky to have. And I ended up getting the visa maybe mid-September. And so I just started to direct all my efforts towards that. And then, I just booked a few Airbnbs, or maybe one or two Airbnbs the first week that I would be in France. And that was it. And then for about 3 months, I was flying by the seat of my pants.
Amazing. I mean, that's how to do it, right? You just have to keep showing up, as scary as that is. You just keep doing it, and then seems things domino from there.
Exactly. You think you can plan a lot of things, but you honestly have very little control of what actually happens.
Yeah, we try to make plans to protect ourselves. We just got to let life happen.
Exactly. Just
So, what
let life
happened from
happen.
there? You started your business.
Yeah, so I've been working as a product designer and designer for over 10 years, and I decided to take a bet on myself, and I can do these things for a company, and I wanted to start doing it for myself and the freedom to eventually work with companies and business owners who have the same values as I do, who share the same values as I do as a creative. And so that's what I started doing. And I started freelancing. And I take on projects to help teams out to make their user experiences a lot more intuitive. Like it sounds very dry, but I'm sure all of us have been on some sort of digital experience on the web or on an app where you're just so frustrated. And I just want to help you not have those sorts of experiences. And so that's something that I do. I've also gotten into photography. And there was a lot of I guess like tension released with photography because with professional work, there's an output that's expected from you. And what I've learned with photography is that it's just the joy of observing and just taking in what you find interesting, taking a picture of it. And it can be done on your phone, or if you have a camera, then that's fine. I think it's the act of noticing.
Definitely.
Uh,
No, that's so true about just taking it all in and making it what you want it to be.
exactly.
So, talk a little bit about how you got into the world of design and storytelling. Was it always something you imagined doing, or did it unfold like unexpectedly?
It was definitely one of those things that unfolded unexpectedly. I studied advertising in college and I worked in advertising as an art director for about 4 years. And I really thought that from college and during those 4 years that my career was going to be, at 40 or 35, I'm going to be a creative director at like a big house or a creative house somewhere in New York. And honestly, like after the first 2 years, I saw that it wasn't for me. Like there was just a lot of burnout early on in that industry for me. And I couldn't reconcile the work that I was putting in and the lack of fulfillment that I was getting out of it. And so I actually pivoted out of advertising into tech, into product design after those 4 years. And I taught myself through the internet and like YouTube and from learning from my mentors in the industry as well. And that's kind of how I got into product design itself. And outside of product design, I also take on clients that are a bit more creative visually. So I help small businesses and brand new brands and startups create a brand identity for themselves, a web presence for themselves. And I've also done photography if they do have um, something visual like pastries or a product or a space that they have.
It's so cool. I love how it all ties together. And do you mainly work with like American companies all around the world, French?
Yeah, mainly American companies. I One of my dreams is to have like an international clientele, just because I love being able to interact and share different cultural points with people. And I think that's what I've always enjoyed in my travels or working in a multicultural environment is learning about other walks of life and just the way like other people's brain works because of the culture that they come from.
Definitely. There's so many connections and overlapping things with what you're doing. And you've worked with everyone from tiny bakeries to full scale UX projects. What do you love most about working with small businesses and startups?
I would say what I love the most is that you're so close to the genesis. You're so close to the spark that this business owner um, was inspired by, and they're pouring, blood, sweat, and tears into this dream, and you're part of this to make it come true. And I think that really speaks to me.
And talk a little bit about how you approach the challenge of translating someone else's vision into a tangible brand or user experience.
That's a good question. I think what I do is that I try to understand their point of view, and I do that by asking a lot of questions. And sometimes the answer to my question actually inspires another question that just goes a level deeper. And I actually use like part of the design process and product design to do this, even with my freelance clients in visual design and branding. It's user research. You want to get into their head, understand their pain points, understand like their end goal. And it's your job to make them, talk very honestly and candidly about what they're looking for, what their hurdles are, their blockers. And your job is to take all of these different types of information and unblock them, and then also get that creative flow going, knowing what they want out of their brand and what their vision is and their mission for their company.
So what's some advice you have for small business owners who are just starting out, they're figuring it out? Like, how would you help them with their business?
I would say take yourself on a date, have a coffee, have a glass of wine, have a cake, and ask yourself some questions because they'll be important answers to the questions that someone like a creative director or, a brand designer will need to know from you. And ask yourself questions like, what is my mission? Um, what are three words that describe my brand? What kind of emotion do I want to evoke from my customers or my users when they interact with my product or my service? Where do I see myself in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years? And these don't have to be correct. Like you don't know what's going to happen in 1, 2, or 5 years. You just need an idea. You just need a vision um, to kind of take you just one step further each day.
And what are some common blocks you see for small businesses?
I think it's some common blocks that I see would be overstimulation and just you're a business owner, you're a small business owner, and you just have a lot of things going through your mind. Um, you have to manage accounting, you have to build up a brand, you have to, think about supply chain depending on what your business is. And you probably don't have expertise in every single one of these verticals. And that's okay. Like you're the business owner, you're the vision setter. And, eventually you'll have other people who know more about these verticals than you do. And that's when you outsource. In the beginning, I would say write it all down. I think a lot of people, small business owners, get stuck in choice paralysis. And it's been really helpful as far as the exercises I've done with clients to take some post it notes. It can be digital or on a piece of paper itself, like a real post it, and write down things on your mind. Like I have to think about how to do accounting and just write it down, put it somewhere, and then write down all of these things that are floating around in your mind just so you get them out of your head and you see them. And then you can start to kind of put together similar post it notes so you can take a next step after that for some action. I think it's just demystifying the ambiguity.
Yeah, break it down into smaller steps because I know even for myself as a full-time photographer, some of them are like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. My brain is fried. How will I
Exactly.
do all these things? And then you just like watch Netflix and give up. So it's like break it down.
It happens.
So talk about what inspired your move to Bordeaux and how did you know France would be the next chapter for you?
Um, I'm going to answer the second question first. I I didn't know until maybe a month before moving here that France was the next chapter for me. And I just started to I just went for this momentum that was already there. I didn't know that it would be moving to France. But like you said earlier, it was kind of like a domino effect of things that were happening in my life. And so let's, you know, back up to late spring of 2024 last year. I was living in New York. I was really burnt out, and I wanted to do some R&R for myself. And I was like, okay, maybe I should, do something that's just for fun. And I actually love the Spanish language, but I felt like I hit a wall and I was not into it anymore, even though I still loved it. And I was like, okay, maybe if I do another language for a little bit, start from zero, maybe I'll, fall in love with Spanish again after trying something different. So I heard about this French school in New York. It's called Cuckoo, from a few people, and I signed up. It's like pretty social. So that was also a big plus for me to meet new people. And I really, really enjoyed those classes. And so I was taking French classes once a week. My friend was going to have her bachelorette party in Quebec. I know it's not the same French, but I was like, I can make it work. And it did not work. So I thought I was preparing for her bachelorette party. Um, and I was able to use a little bit, just like the French that would be understood in general, like, merci, but the accent was terrible. I was just doing my best. And then I was like, oh, okay, that was fun when after the bachelorette party happened. And I was like, maybe I can, turbo boost my French language learning and take a working vacation in France. And that's how I was in France doing that road trip and working remotely for a month last summer. And, come the layoff and me asking what I should do with my life, I just looked at what's been happening, the things that I've been enjoying, and the cards that I had. And one of the cards is, I work in a field that's location independent. And I had this like succession of just following French the past 4 or 5 months and improving it. And I think I just like, added one more domino to that, even though it was a pretty big domino. And I said, okay, well, I guess the next step is learning French and finding new clients on my own in
That's
France.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, I love that. And like,
it's
how did
wild.
you face those fears of moving here, not knowing anybody? Like, how did you force yourself to do it?
I actually like sat down at my little table in New York and I took, I think, 10 little pieces of paper or a sheet of paper that I divided up into 8 pieces and I cut it up. And on each piece of paper, I wrote half of the reasons why I should stay in New York and then mirroring those same thoughts, but on their like flipping them on their heads, why I should not do that and move to France. And so it's just this little exercise for me to reflect on, this fork in the road. And I remember, for example, like one is that I have friends in New York. I know the language. I'm fairly comfortable here. Um, breaking it down to something that small as in like, I know the culture, I know the language, I have friends here. And the flip side of that was even though I do have my friends here, I've struggled the past 5 years to find community. And I think there's a very subtle nuance there between friends and community. And I found a semblance of community when I was taking those classes at that French school. And it was because I was surrounded by other people who were like me. And by like me, I mean people who are language nerds. And so I was starting to get a taste for what that was like to have kindred spirits around me. And so I did that exercise for 4 or 5 more topics. And I took a bet on myself.
That's what it's all about, right? And like you
Yeah.
said, you're like, oh, I have friends, but are they really the people I want to hang out with? And like, I can find my people, it's common interest. So it makes it a little easier to convince yourself to take a big leap.
Yeah, that's exactly that. I convinced myself.
Yeah, we got to convince ourselves to do a lot of things.
And you write honestly about the highs and lows of expat life. What's been one of the most surprising lessons you've learned living abroad?
Um, Let me think. I would say this isn't surprising. It's almost expected, but every time I've moved abroad, it still surprises me. It's not easy. It's very, very hard. And I think that when you're on the other side um, of living abroad, meaning living at home, there's this idealization and this fantasy of what it's like to live in France, for example. And you think about, going to a cafe and having your croissant moment and walking around the gardens, but you don't really think about how hard it is not to be in your native language, not to know the culture at all. Or if you do, then there are always nuances. There's always something in front of you that's new. And I think it's an illusion, honestly, that moving abroad is all rainbows and butterflies. It's actually a lot of ugly.
I definitely agree. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know that, and a lot of my clients are like, "Oh, you're living the dream. I want to move here," and I'm like, "Maybe just spend 90 days. Come and go."
Yeah, seriously.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, you have to really like be very patient. You have to be very flexible and like a chameleon. So yeah, it's not for everybody. And
Definitely.
what stories or experiences do you feel are still underrepresented in the typical American in France narrative?
Um, I would say I've had trouble finding women and women of color sharing their stories. And that's why I was so inspired by the podcast with Colette, I believe, and you, obviously, women, and then Colette herself, a Black woman, and building a business that connects French and American culture or those who are interested in French culture. I think that's huge. And I think we're so underrepresented in the like you can do whatever you want with your life and your career industry. There's this expectation um, in our generation, in my generation anyway, millennial generation, of following the path that was, laid down by society, which was to go to school and get a good job and like find your partner and have kids and buy a house, the whole thing. But, you know, today's today's day-to-day life and today's, economic and social standing show that that's not what happiness looks like, and that's not even attainable by a lot of us. And now with all of these like big companies just letting people go because they need to meet their bottom line, I believe that people need to start looking after themselves, build up your skill set. Like, what do you want to do? Or how do you want to improve what you can offer? And start building your skills around you rather than chasing this carrot in front of you and then building your skills to be able to, finally get this carrot.
Yeah, it's definitely more of an entrepreneur world now with the
Yeah,
internet and being able to teach ourselves anything and reach anybody. It's really opened this door, and it can be scary because, yeah, you have to wear all the hats, but also it's opportunity to do what you love and not have to work for someone else who could just drop you anytime.
exactly. And it's now that companies are just, laying people off left and right, maybe sometimes even pulling a contract before you even start. In my opinion, there's no stable job anymore. Working for a company doesn't mean that you have a stable job. If it's going to be that unstable anyway, then I'll be a freelancer.
This is so true. I think that somebody said that it was like, I think it was Jim Carrey or something, and he saw his dad get laid off. Like,
It was.
out of nowhere, and they were living in a car, and he's just like, it proved to me like there is no stable job. I'm going to try to be an actor and comedian because why not? Because I could lose my job anyway, even if I have a quote unquote normal job.
Exactly. And I think his dad was an accountant.
Yeah, even crazier. That's like a real job. So, where do you find creative inspiration lately, in French culture, everyday life, or something totally unexpected?
I would say French culture, just because I'm learning something new every day, and I can't pinpoint exactly, what the inspiration is. I think it's a dose of inspiration, just like you feel inspired, you feel open to trying new things. Um, and I think that comes with experiencing new things or learning new things about other people, a language, even, or how a society works. I think that just gives you, like how you take vitamin C or any vitamin supplements and then you're feeling better or you feel more healthy. I think that's it, with inspiration. If it's around you, you feel open.
Yeah, definitely. You just need to be open to it.
Exactly.
And what advice would you give to someone who's feeling stuck in the grind but scared to make a big change?
I would say don't be afraid to be terrible at first. Just try. Because so many people actually give up, and so many more people are just too afraid to try, period. And if you are trying, and if something's working with you, an idea that you have or something, a project that you're giving a go, or it's even when it's not working out for you, stay curious, ask yourself, how can I do this differently? Or ask yourself, what if I, dot, dot, dot. You just need to open up your mind to possibilities and to allow yourself to try.
Yeah, that's great advice. And what about people who are already burnt out and like, I don't even know who I am. I don't even know what I like anymore. Like, I'm just in this hamster wheel. What do I do?
I have been there. I would say journal. I'm a big journaler. I have a physical one that I just keep next to my bed. And then I have one on Notion. I'm sure you can do it in Word or Google Docs, wherever you want. And I journal almost every day or at least a few times a week. And you have to be really, really honest in that journal, your dreams, what's hurting you right now, and make it a practice to read back on your entries every, I don't know, 2 weeks, month. So you kind of see any patterns or trends that you're seeing, or even any progress or improvement in your mood. Because a lot of times we just kind of think about, oh, I don't feel like myself. And I'm talking about my own experience. I don't feel like myself. I don't know what to do. And it's just the same conversation you're having with yourself in your head over and over again. And this goes back to that post-its exercise that we talked about earlier. All these things in your head floating around, and they actually weigh down on you in your day to day. And it's journaling is a practice to take some of these things out of your brain, off your chest, putting them down on paper, reading them, and then turning the page.
I think that's great advice. And I always like to ask all my guests, how do you define creativity?
Yeah. I would say for me, creativity is the willingness and openness and courage to try something new. And it's the journey and not at all the destination. Creativity for me is alive. And what I mean by that is that when ideas come to you, they're most likely going to eventually change. And that change can be a little or a lot because that's what happens when ideas evolve. You just have to say yes.
I think that's a great definition and so helpful to so many of our listeners. And what is next for you? Where can people connect with you, learn more about your projects, read what you're writing?
Yeah. So, what's next for me? I'm working on some personal AI projects that I hope to put out in the world once I have a stable version of it. There are a lot of ethical questions around AI, and I want to keep educating myself on its evolution and how I can offer services and I want to keep educating myself on AI's evolution and how I can use it for positive social impact projects rather than just this race for um, building a human brain that is actually a computer. So right now I'm just experimenting with AI and also working with my design clients. and hoping to marry those together in the very near future.
Very
And
cool. I can't
yeah,
wait to see that. And where can people connect with you and learn more?
yeah. So you can read about what it's like to live abroad on my Substack. It is marielibres.substack.com. That's just my first and last name. That's marielibres.substack.com. And if you're looking for some guidance in your own creative journey, I also offer life coaching sessions where you can find more info. Would be at the-truenorthcollective.com. And if you just want to see what I'm up to in a very normal sense, you can follow me on Instagram at Marie Libres.
Very cool. Well, we'll share all that in the show notes. And thanks so much for sharing today.
Thanks, Crystal. Thanks for having me. Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.